Hello, welcome back. I'm Susan.
And I'm Wilfrid. And today we're going to talk about condition of books. Probably the most important aspect if you're going to buy a book is what is its condition. And we thought we'd bring a selection of books to give you an idea of what, in our opinion, the conditions were.
And I found my glasses because I have to be able to see the books.
There's an old joke, you know the real estate joke about there are three things in real estate: location, location, and location. Well, in book collecting, I like to think of it as the three things. It's condition, condition, and condition. And sometimes people even say there's a fourth.
That's right.
Condition. Anyway, that's out of the way.
All right, what we're gonna do is run you through the terms that are used in describing the general condition of a book. And then we will kind of show you examples as we go along.
Go ahead.
Okay. The lowest rank, well, the lowest rank you don't want to know. It means it's been through a flood or a fire or whatever, and it's like, I don't want that book. The next one you'll hear is poor. Poor is a book that really is pathetic. It's falling apart on the inside. I can't really show you how that's coming at. Often there are leaves that are loose. This one's just not quite loose, but it's getting there. There are cracked hinges. The cloth is coming loose. There are lots of bits missing. You don't want this in your hands because it just looks oogie. You'd go into a bookshop, you'd see it, and you go, ooh, that's poor. I don't want that.
On the other hand, let me interrupt, and that's sometimes you might decide, well, I'd prefer to have a poor copy of a book rather than no copy of a book, especially if it's a relatively scarce book. In which case, you would, okay, I'll compromise and buy a poor copy in the hope that you'd find a better copy, in which case you'd upgrade.
And the other thing, you will sometimes see a really not great copy described as a binding copy, which means you don't want it as it is, but if you spend the money to put a fancy binding on it, you might like it.
And beware of good for its age. That's always a giveaway. Next, we'll talk about a good copy. There's an old joke in the book trade about good is not good enough, but that's a slight exaggeration. Here we have a copy of a 19th century, I think.
19th century.
Book. Small book. In pretty good condition, but it's, when you look closely, you can see there's some staining up here to the front cover.
And right down
all around the spine. And there's some loss of color on the rear cover.
It's tired.
Yeah.
It's weak.
Yeah.
But it's holding together.
All the edges are gilt. So it's essentially, it's a good copy, but for collecting purposes, perhaps not good enough. But I'd be satisfied with this, 1887.
It is in our stock after all.
Yeah, it is indeed. Yeah.
The other one is sort of adjunct to our stock. We won't go there. Yeah. The next major condition thing that you'll hear is very good. Very good often is hinged to what it is. This is a rowing book. It's a fairly uncommon book, so people are willing to tolerate a little bit more. But it's in the block itself is good and strong. It's in good condition. The end papers are uncracked. If there's a break up here, well, there's just the beginning of a. All right, let's put it up here. You can just see the beginning of cracking here. Hairline crack, but it isn't cracked. The back one is perfect. It is a little bit tired, but the gilt is still pretty good. So subjectively, we would refer to this as a very good copy. It, again, is one you might be looking for a fine copy, but until you find it, if you find it, a very good copy might do just nicely in your collection. Wilfrid's now moving on to one that's got a dust jacket.
In a relatively, well, it's a more modern book. This is from 1931, I think, 32. It's just a fairly ordinary copy of Kipling's humorous tales. But because it had the original dust jacket, which I took off to show you the book. Oh, this is the reflection is bad, but I think I can get it to you. In this case, it had the dust jacket, which is pretty well complete. A little bit of flaking at the top of the head of the spine,
faded.
and it's a little bit faded. But the dust jacket did its job. It kept the book, as I showed you before, in very good condition. In fact, it's near fine.
Fine condition.
So if it didn't have the dust jacket, then it probably wouldn't be kept wouldn't be as nice as it is.
Right. And this, you would grade the dust jacket versus the book.
Indeed, in books with dust jackets, it's important to know that the dealer should, the seller should indicate the condition of the dust jacket and the condition of the book separately.
In this case, a very good dust jacket on a near fine book.
Copy of the book, right?
Right. So moving on to near fine in general, we do a lot of Darwin. This is a reprint of The Descent of Man, one of his classic books, of course. I think I've already put a fine copy of The Descent of Man out on the Book of the Day. It is faded here, but not hugely faded. There are a few tiny, I don't even know if you'll be able to see them, speckles of not quite perfectly green cloth.
Yeah, you're being hypercritical.
I am being hypercritical, and we do tend to be hypercritical in our descriptions. Has an inscription, or ownership inscription, I should say, and the pages are age-toned and a little bit what we call
rippled.
So it's not a really perfect copy, but by God, it's a nice copy. So this is a near fine.
Yeah.
Now, in a dust jacket...
I would say, I would disagree with that. I'd say in a Darwin, in that condition, for when is it, 1890 something, I would say it's fine.
But the one we put out was better.
Ah, okay.
Therefore, I would call that a fine and this one a near fine. Anyway, and the next is another older book.
This is from 1908.
1908. This is a fine copy. The gilt is bright, the color is firm, the binding is strong, it's no fading on the spine, it's got no cracking on the hinge, the block is well preserved, tight. It's just the illustrations are clean and sharp and there's nothing missing. This is a fine copy. There are also fine copies in dust jackets.
Yeah. And here's a book from 1944, Bernard Shaw's Everybody's Political What's What. And this is about as fine a copy as you can find, I would say. No fading. Very often these orange colored dust jackets, orange and reds and blues, they fade. In this case, it's perfect. It's no chipping to the head of the spine. Perfect. Importantly, the dust jacket has still got the price on it. I'll just take it off. You can still see. Very often you'll see people saying unprice clipped or price clipped. In this case, the price is down there. It hasn't been clipped. You can see that little line was designed for the price to be clipped in case you were giving the book as a gift. In this case, it hasn't been clipped, and it's a fine copy of the dust jacket, and, as you would expect, a fine copy of the book in all respects. Nice and clean, no bumped corners, no inscriptions inside. So that's a 20th century copy of a copy of a 20th century fine copy of a book. And then finally, as new, which you would expect to be just what it says, as new. Here is Jan Martel's book, The High Mountains of Portugal, from 2016. So even though it's 4 years old, it's as new. Just as you would buy it from the bookshop, as probably I did, or we did. And actually, in this case, I think it was signed by him.
Yes, it is signed by him.
Yes, in this case, a signed copy of a book by first edition by Jan Martel. There it is. There's the signature. So when it says as new, you should be able to expect that the book would be in just like it says as new condition.
As though you'd gone to the bookshop
And
and
bought
bought
it.
it yourself.
Yeah.
But of course, the first editions are no longer available in the bookshop
Right.
for you to buy yourself. So those are the basics of condition. There are a lot of other little things that come into it. So read your descriptions carefully. Understand what it is the bookseller's telling you. But if you're in doubt, ask questions. There is not one of us who would mind answering your questions. We want you to be happy with what you
Yes.
buy.
I think we prefer to say a book is very good, and when the person receives it, they think, no, this is fine.
Or near fine at least.
Oh, near fine. Yes.
But we all have our own ways. So do ask questions and good luck.
Bye. Till next time.